Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the European Data Portal and Support Center for Data Sharing's Data Talk sessions on the drivers of data sharing. Today, we are joined by Laia Pujol to share her insights into the analytical report she wrote on behalf of the European Data Portal. Laia, I give you the floor, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. So my name is Laia Pujol. As you said, I'm a research fellow at the Lisbon Council. I'm also a lecturer at International University of Catalonia and a lecturer also at the SCDS Business School. And my research topic has been for a while digital innovation. So this is my focus area, and especially looking at different innovation models that are based on opening up information, data, and knowledge, and how companies cooperate in these kind of ecosystems and settings. And for a while, I've been working already on the data, in particular in data governance, which is the topic that I'm most interested. So basically, how companies build or cooperate in data infrastructures, how they share information, how they use this kind of analytics to provide new products and services or accelerate their R&D or innovation processes. So this is how basically like the origins of the study that I'm going to share a little bit more today started. Yeah.
Before we get into that, from the broad spectrum of data governance, how did you get involved with or interested in the open data and the data sharing domain? Because they're quite specific in the whole umbrella.
Yeah. So basically, I mean, open data is making data accessible as a minimum restriction and basically as a lower cost. And data sharing is basically giving access to someone at a specific in a specific context. And I came interested in both, in the sense of this is like a continuum where you restrict less or more access, I mean, to your data with more or less costs, basically. So how to govern basically the access to this data, whether this is openly accessible to everybody or whether you want specific companies or organizations to access, is behind this concept of data governance. So I think, especially in the trends that we have witnessed in the last years, again, more data intensive phenomenon that is affecting different sectors, I became more and more interested because I see a huge economic and business impacts, I mean, on companies, on whether and how and with who they share their data, and basically how they make sure that the uses that others are doing with their data are the ones are appropriate, or appropriate in the sense of what they want or they foresee. So basically, my background is in management science, by the way. So and I'm working in business school. So for me, data is a fascinating phenomenon. Yeah.
Glad to hear. Then let's start to introduce the analytical report on the drivers for data sharing. Before I start to ask away on my questions, would you like to give a brief introduction to the research paper?
Yeah, I can do that. So basically, what we did with my co-author, with David Osimo, so we wanted both to better understand adoption, both in open data and data sharing. So, because there's a wealth of policy measures out there, there's been quite a policy attention to both open data and data sharing, but we were wondering how, and in particular, the like municipalities or public agencies were doing when it comes to adopting or incentivizing open data and data sharing. So what we did is we entered in an exploratory phase where we had different interviews and open discussions with policymakers at the local level, and also from an agency perspective. And then we decided to select, in the case of open data, the Lombardy region, basically, which has put a lot of effort in open data, and recently in the last years also from a financial perspective. And then we engage in a conversation with the person responsible of the open data portal in the region to better understand how they were achieving a higher adoption of municipalities of open data and releasing more and more data in their open data portal. So when we started discussions, they gave us a data set of the 1,500 municipalities that the region has. And we started through this data set better understanding how municipalities were doing when it comes to open data. So in a second stage, we selected Pavia as a municipality to dive in and really understand, in the case of such municipality, why they were doing so great when it comes to open data. So why and how they were generating this kind of virtuous cycle where very engaged civil servant with the support of policy leaders were releasing more and more data, and then how different services were being built on top of this data that was released. So this one, and then I can share more insights maybe later on the results. And then regarding the public agencies, the same thing. So we wanted to select a sector where data was highly valuable for innovation and R&D. And we've been doing quite a lot of research in the last years on pharma and health. So we were wondering to understand better other sectors, because there's been quite a lot already insight, I would say, on the data sharing in this sector. So engaging again with different conversations with agencies, we found fascinating the case of oil and gas sector. I also engage in different conversations with academic researchers that are working on data governance in this sector, in oil and gas. Because basically what has happened is that we've witnessed a transition of very secretive sector, with oil and gas companies were very protective towards very valuable data on exploration and production activities, which are the early stages of the energy production. And we witnessed how both in Netherlands and Norway there was this increasing movement of sharing more and more data, not only with the government but also towards third parties. But why we selected Norway and Netherlands is basically that in both cases we saw increasing like data sharing in this sector, yet the approaches were different. So this gave us an opportunity to understand different mechanisms, creative mechanisms that were put in place by both countries in order to incentivize oil and gas companies to share their data. So I don't know, maybe it's enough, and maybe through our conversation we can go through the different results. What do you think? You're mute, Eileen.
Thank you for
Yeah.
notifying me.
Yeah.
I think that's a good start, and also to reach out to the audience. If they also have questions regarding what Laia just shared, please either stay in the chat or also unmute yourself and use this space to ask Laia for more details on her research. Allow me though to kick it off. You mentioned in regard to the open data in Lombardy and in Padua, how did how exactly did the region motivate the civil servants to be interested in doing this, and how exactly did they achieve having such a high number of open data publications? Because you discussed that they were enforcing a virtuous circle, that the civil servants were very motivated to do so, to search, to look at, and to publish the open data, and that they were achieving this in great quantities compared to other regions and other countries. Are there specific examples of why this was successful?
Yeah, so basically, I mean, well, we did not do a systematic like comparative analysis with other countries, so we really like focus on Italy and the region of Lombardy and the different municipalities to look at the different dynamics. What we learned, and this is something that can be inspiring or for other territories, basically, is that they gave financial the financial support was very small. So, I mean, but to those municipalities, particularly to the small ones, in order to make the data available. So you need to think that to upload data into an open data portal, there are different activities which require like data curation, standardization of the data so that it can be reused, the metadata, meaning putting the information of the data that you're uploading there. So there are different works need to be put in place. So basically, they gave small amounts of money to cover the cost. Take into consideration that the cost can be around 2,000 euros, so it's not much. But to cover the cost, the direct cost of those municipalities to work with this data, but not only. So the financial support was not enough. So on top of it, the region help and coordinate with different companies and suppliers that help those municipalities to upload the data and make it ready in order to reuse. So basically, because there are economies of scale, they negotiate or try to orchestrate with a couple or three suppliers, and they facilitate this context to the municipalities that they could select among all the suppliers that they want. But I mean, they had like a different prices or it was easiest basically to and then also the suppliers, I mean, gained some knowledge about how to do this work across the different municipalities, so it was kind of like a win-win situation. So there was these two components, and on the other side, what we saw in the study and through the interviews is that the fact that the civil servants were motivated, like had the financial resources, the technical support, and the willingness, the motivation, I mean, to do so, they could already grasp very quick benefits of opening up data. So they were mentioning different examples of how their data on the territory, for instance, in Pavia, was being used by bike sharing services or other type of services. So this generated like this kind of virtuous cycle, because then policy leaders saw the benefits of the different services that were popping up just by releasing the data in an appropriate format, etc. So even if the parties that were governing the municipality change, that by the way change in every election, yet this upper and managerial, administrative, very engaged civil servants that were there. I mean, it was not this was not something that the policy leaders touched, basically. So they protected this. They could see the benefits for everybody. I mean, despite the different parties, etc. So this became kind of neutral. I think I answered a little bit your question, but I can provide more information if you want. Eileen, you're mute. Yeah.
It's hopefully not a recurring problem. You definitely did answer my question. And the follow-up to that is, with this economic incentives, with the coordination with the business suppliers, the policy leadership, and the technical guidance, what, in light of all these things, what can other cities and countries, or what are some takeaway messages that you found in this research that other regions, cities, and countries can more concretely take away? Because this is also quite specific to the Lombardy region, and not everything that was done here is applicable to other areas.
Yeah. So basically, the takeaways is that first, making data available to the public, so open, has a cost. So if someone is serious about, so if a region or a state or a territory is serious about open data, then they need to provide financial support, which is not a large one, so it's quite small quantities, but they need to provide financial support and easy to access to these municipalities, by the way. So not a financial support which is like very hard to get or something. So very kind of like a very easy access. And then they need technical guidance, which is not providing like, okay, here you have guidelines, you need to read these. So it means like putting someone there in these very small municipalities, which sometimes they don't have like the technical capabilities or the skills. I mean, to just like uh, deal with these data activities. So someone, it can be like a supplier, it can be an intermediary by another administrative level, but someone that comes there, that goes there physically and engage with the civil servants and help making the work, basically putting the data out there. And then from the case of Lombardia, I mean, it's true that they did some dissemination activities in order to get people engaged and reuse the data. But one key takeaway is that the thing that generate more the leverage, I mean, the more like services or different activities on top of this data, is that they used data standards that are globally or widely used, for instance, for geospatial or for others. So um, putting a lot of attention and time, but making this data standardized, then you can discover, because this is what happened in Lombardy, and then your data is being used by plenty of other services that are in OpenStreetMap or in other type of platforms. So basically, for us, this was the main takeaways. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. I invite also again the audience to come in the chat or unmute yourself if you have further questions. Otherwise, I have.
Stefan, yeah, I have a video. So now you can see me, hopefully. You just mentioned the data usage or monitor the data usage. Was there a way how to do this actually? How to get an idea who uses the data? Because, I mean, let's say you provide data via an API, then anybody accesses the data and uses it for something. But how do you know that this somebody used this data for something? I mean, was this part of the project or of the study to get an idea about this data consumers, who they are and what are they doing with the data?
Yeah. So, I mean, as part of the study, we didn't get into the details of how they track basically the data reuse, which is one of the most challenging things. I mean, both for, in the case of data sharing for the oil and gas sector, but also from the open data. So in this case, in the, I can share the examples of, so basically in the Italy, in the Lombardy region, it was the civil servants like following up and trying to monitor basically in different in the big platforms, and but it was more in a hazardous or in a serendipities, so it was not something systematic that was done basically. So there was not a systematic approach of tracking the reuse of data. So they don't know they don't know this. They only know like anecdotal examples of how this data has been reused because they happen to to know because of different circumstances. In the case of the public agencies for data sharing, they, for instance, in both Netherlands and Norway, the different services, they know more how this energy data is reused just because other, for instance, geothermal energy productions or other energy productions are reusing this data. So basically, it's a very direct or very close reuse in the sector, and this is something that that they know because they oversee the energy production in the country. But again, I don't know if there's a systematic approach of how to track. This is also one thing that we have had problems with other type of studies, for instance, related to open source. So open source hardware, open source software, how people use your code, your hardware design, your data, which is openly available for other purposes. This is still, maybe other technologies, blockchain or others, can help us there. Let's see.
I mean, ideally, the data provider gets at the end some credit for this data, and then he can say to his funder, okay, here, let's see, the data was used in that way, and it what you actually funded was valuable. I mean, the funder is also interested in creating some valuable product. Different question. The data quality, was this somehow looked as well, that the quality of the data was somehow described? Because I mean, that's always an issue when you provide some data. How good is the data, and is it kind of described? I mean, there are maybe standards around, metadata standards for describing data quality, but was this also part of the study?
Yeah, so basically, I mean, for the data quality, so for the oil and gas sector, I can explain more how to do it. So basically, in the Netherlands is TNO, basically the agency which is in charge of sending a survey every year to oil and gas companies. They provide the data every year, and then they start an open dialogue, bilateral dialogue with the different companies in order to guarantee that they get right both the quality, the metadata, so the information of the data, and that they also like comply with the data standards, so the data specifications and formats that they need. So basically, this is a very intensive work that TNO does, and they adopt basic data standards that are more like European or globally. So but they are in charge of this. And then when it comes to Norway, basically, the government, so Norwegian government has done a joint venture with the different oil companies, and then the director, the public department that is in charge of this, they have done this joint venture in order to closely monitor the data that they generate, those companies, and then to get a very closer sense of the quality, and then also they provide guidance on how those companies again need to provide the data in terms of metadata, the standards, and these kind of things. So there are different engagements, so different governance modalities, but in both cases they do a close monitoring. And in the case of Lombardy region, it was the department, the open data, the person who is leading the region, this open data policy, who was in a very top-down manner, I would say, but saying how those municipalities need to comply in this provision of data. So they have centralized the provision of data through the open data portal. So of course, every municipality can open up their data in the different ways that they want, but also they need to comply with the different rules, guidance, and standards of the open data portal. So they do this activity. Yeah.
So basically, there was always kind of strong leadership involved.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, that's a takeaway message for myself.
Yeah.
You need a strong leadership in these data sharing projects. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Thank you to Stefan for the questions. I'm not on mute, which is a nice thing. I had another question also linking more to your for when your selection of the Netherlands and Norway. I'm clear on why they were selected. Were there others that were almost selected in place of either of these countries that are also exemplary in the oil and gas sector or in data sharing regards?
So basically, we select both in the sense that Netherlands is one of the countries leading or going more to opening up data of this oil and gas sector, and they've been doing this for a while with building quite strong infrastructure and services, and through this kind of engagement of TNO orchestrating this whole trend. And Norway, we found fascinating the model that they follow. So the Discos, that is this joint venture created by all companies in cooperation with the government, so that the government could be like another party in a. So it's not like a top down. So it's another party in this kind of like we could say like a consortium or a group of organizations, and how they managed to provide different basically rules on how data need to be shared. So for instance, they established and we thought this was also like a nice takeaway, different embargo periods for the data. So they gave exclusivity rights of the companies, I mean, to exploit the data. But these embargo periods, these exclusivity rights towards a period of time, change depending on the type of data. So they establish somehow a different value to the data, in the sense that if it's a raw data, it has less value, but it's data that has been already like treated and with some interpretations, then they gave you like longer embargo periods, because there's been a lot of investment of the company to extract also the value from this. So in both cases, as they were very interesting, in the sense that very creative and different approaches to incentivize to make compatible both these competitive needs of companies who are putting a lot of money, I mean, to extract this data and generate this data, but also the social benefits and social goals and public good that is like oversee and closely monitor how your resources and your territory and it's being exploited. So, yeah.
We also have another question that I'm at least getting. Can you share who the person responsible is in Lombardy for the publication of open data?
The person, so I can recall now the name. I think the details are in the report, and but the name, I guess we want to get it anonymized. So I think in the report there's the how do you say, the position of this person. But I think this person changed position. But anyway, I can, if there's something that if it's very important, I can check in the report and maybe follow up with the person. Yeah.
Okay. My last question, at least on my part, and I'm still inviting the audience to also jump in, is you already shared some takeaways for your research in the data sharing aspect. And you also shared a lot about how the Netherlands, for example, checked the quality of the data that was being shared by the actors in the oil and gas industry. Is this in parallel with how it was also done in Norway, or was it how did the data quality check there differ, and the
Yeah.
management and governance?
Yeah. So basically, in Norway, there's Discos, and then Discos, which is this joint venture, have different suppliers. So there was IBM for a while, but I don't know if it's still. So they have these public contracts that change over time. Well, where they have the technical support in order to all the activities related to data, basically, to make sure that the data generated is captured in the way that it needs to be, and then that is like treated, and then the quality the data is appropriate. So basically they have these contracts, which are contracts not for the specific companies, but as I said, with this joint venture, which makes more like a global or a cooperative way to generate data in the quality for all of them that's right. So yes, so there are different approaches. In the sense, here we have like external suppliers and the joint venture. In the case of Netherlands, you have TNO, and they are doing this in house. Yeah.
Okay. That is the at least the final question, main pressing question on my part. I also open again the floor to others who would like to jump in. Otherwise, my I guess, and final question is to Laia, what are next steps you see in research regarding open data and data sharing going for you and your colleagues and the other research in the field going forward? What other aspects need to be investigated and looked into to further facilitate the publication of open data, and so different regions and countries can realize its value and impact for the citizens, and to facilitate data sharing between institutions, whether from business to business, government to business, business to government, or government to government,
Yeah,
or any form thereafter?
thank you. So thank you very much for this question. So I'm currently doing research. This is my passion. So like and in particular data sharing. And what I see next, I've done quite a lot of research, as I said, in pharma, in the genomics data and mixed to health data, and there are quite a very creative mechanisms that have emerged of how data is governed in a way that they can be shared to the different stakeholders in the ecosystem. Now I have this research on oil and gas that I want to further, and I see plenty of commonalities. So despite sectoral difference, there are different takeaways. So my goal is to combine the data from oil and gas and pharma R&D, and potentially like joining forces with other researchers from other sectors and other researchers that have been doing work on data governance, and try to see patterns that how to govern data in this continuum from more open to more restricted. So this when it comes to data sharing. So basically combining sectoral data and to come up with very strong insights there. And then when regarding open data, we wanted to pursue the research to understand differences, basically. So to run like a more large scale comparative analysis of trying to emerge or try to identify different factors generating this kind of virtuous cycle that we discover in Pavia and Lombardy. So basically, like putting together like more data, and we were thinking also more again like more qualitative research, like more interviews, try to understand how the willingness and motivation of civil servants, financial support, technical guidance, and potentially other factors help to motivate and increase open data.
Thank you very much for those remarks and for letting us know what to continue to expect in at least you and your team's research in this area. Thank you also to the participants and for those who joined in. If you have any further questions regarding this, please do email us at info@europeandataportal.eu or info@eudatasharing.eu. This recording will also be made live next Monday. So for those who are interested in this topic but could not be here, we can share this with them so that they can also be informed. Thank you all and have a great afternoon.
Thank you very much. A pleasure. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.